Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Garrett Hake in New York as President Trump tries to turn his focus to November's elections, even as tensions he's created with his own party and the increasingly tenuous agreement with Iran threaten to stymie his midterm message. Today, President Trump delivering the keynote address at the Faith and Freedom Coalition conference as he looks to rally his base. The president focusing much of his midterm messaging today on Tuesday's victories by Democratic Socialist candidates here in New York, calling them communists and a threat to the country.
And as you saw with the communists elected in New York City recently, they're communists, they're not social democrats. They want to completely destroy the traditional American way of life. It's becoming a communist party. These are not social democrats. These are hardcore godless communists. They're godless communists. All communists are godless. They don't believe in God. This is the most serious threat to our country since its existence, in my opinion, 250 years ago. This is a major threat to our country.
And it comes as the president is stepping on his own agenda, complicating Republican lawmakers' efforts to highlight their work to lower the costs for voters. Earlier this week, Mr. Trump abruptly announced, to the shock and dismay of many in his party, that he was canceling an event to sign the bipartisan housing bill that passed with overwhelming support, demanding Republicans pass his overhauling voting access bill first. After a multi-hour meeting at the White House yesterday, Speaker Johnson sounded optimistic.
Very productive meeting. We're on exactly the same page. He wants to ensure that we stop any blockade in the House. Congress has work to do, and that's what we're going to do. The majority party should never be voting down rules. We got to be able to move forward on legislation and continue the America First agenda. And so we're happy to do that. It's another day at the office. You know, this is the process in an era with small margins, but we'll get the job done.
But today, President Trump again expressing his frustration with Republicans standing in the way of the Save America Act.
All voters must show photo ID. Not so bad, huh? All voters must provide proof of citizenship. Is that so hard? And you're fighting the Democrats and a few Republicans who are doing a tremendous disservice to this country.
Meanwhile, tensions with Iran are once again escalating, which could further complicate the president's midterm message on the economy. The president confirming today that Iran fired 4 drones at a cargo ship in the Strait of Hormuz, saying the U.S. knocked down 3 of them and calling the attack a foolish violation of the ceasefire. Since striking the deal with Iran, President Trump has been touting the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, claiming it will bring down gas prices. And oil prices are almost back down to pre-war levels, coming down below $70 a barrel for the first time since the war began almost 4 months ago. But any disruption in the Strait or further violations of the ceasefire could threaten that progress. And moments ago in the Oval Office, President Trump reacting to Iran's attack on that cargo ship in the Strait yesterday.
You said that Iran violated the ceasefire. Will they face any consequences?
You'll find out.
Do you consider the ceasefire to still be in place?
I don't like the fact that they took a shot yesterday, actually 4, we knocked down 3, at a ship. Not an Allied ship, but a ship, a very expensive ship. And it was fine, but it took a little beating. They shouldn't be doing that, so you'll find out.
Joining me to break it all down now is NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez, NBC News senior national security correspondent Courtney Kube, and NBC News business and economy reporter Allie Canal. So, Gabe, what did you make of the president's message today? How much of what we heard today do you think will be a consistent part of the midterm message?
Well, Garrett, certainly what you just described, the president referring to Democrats as communists, that's something we expect to hear quite a bit of over the next couple of months, because we have been hearing it now for the last couple of days, ever since those primary victories by those Democratic candidates in New York that were backed by the New York mayor, Zohran Mamdani. Now, President Trump over the last several days has been escalating that message during his speech at the Faith and Freedom Coalition today. As you stated, that was a large part of his message, but also what we just heard in the Oval Office, this religious freedom Freedom Commission, this draft report that is now being put forward, recommending basically replacing the idea of the separation of church and state. The president certainly playing to his base right here and trying to polarize the electorate. You have, him trying to play to his base while also denigrating Democrats and referring to them as godless communists, something that we heard several times during his speech today over at the Washington Hilton, Garrett.
How much is he complicating the midterm play here with these constant infighting with the Republican Party? Do they need to put this sort of behind him, whether it's on Iran or on SAVE Act, if he actually wants to focus on affordability?
Well, look, Garrett, you know as well as I do, he doesn't seem to care much about what congressional Republicans think. However, you're right. I mean, he lashed out at what he called grandstanders in the Republican Party overnight after meeting with House Speaker Mike Johnson yesterday. But at the same time, he canceled that signing ceremony yesterday, something that so many congressional Republicans have been looking forward to, looking to make it a part of their midterm message. And now the question is, what happens next in that in this rift between the Republican Party? It still remains unclear whether the president will go along with some of these congressional Republicans as their agenda at the moment seems to be stalled in Congress, with representatives like Anna Paulina Luna, some hardliners, wanting to bring all of this to a halt. And yet the president says that they're now grandstanding. This is still being ironed out on the Hill, obviously.
On the subject of grandstanding, do we have any update on when or even if the president will sign that housing bill?
The White House has not said whether he does indeed plan to sign it. Of course, now that it's supposedly been transmitted to the White House, it will become law in 10 days. We haven't gotten any indication that he plans to veto it at this point. So could be that he just does nothing and it becomes law automatically within 10 days. But again, it took away that nice, big, shiny press conference and signing ceremony that many congressional Republicans had been wanting ahead of this midterm campaign, Gabe.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez on the North Lawn. Gabe, thank you. So, Courtney, I'll turn to you now. What more do we know about the situation in the Strait? Has the president described it accurately-ish?
We don't really know, actually. We do know, the facts that we know to be true are that at least one Iranian drone, we believe fired by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, one drone did hit a commercial ship. The U.S. military shot down at least one other drone. That's really all that we know about the situation beyond what President Trump has now been saying several times today and posting on social media. Now, at this point, we're not aware of any further firing beyond this one yesterday by the IRGC. But President Trump sort of upping the ante on it today when he posted that it was this violation of the ceasefire, as you just read on social media. So now the big question is, will there be any kind of a U.S. response to the violation of the ceasefire? Since the Memorandum of Understanding was signed on June 17th, we have not seen the back and forth in the Strait of Hormuz that we were seeing every single day there for weeks and weeks. So it's, again, we're really in sort of a wait-and-see mode to see whether these threats by the IRGC that they carried out, at least on this one occasion, whether they continue and whether it really does have an impact on the ceasefire going forward.
And Vice President Vance said that the U.S. and Iran had established some kind of communications line to avoid a potential military confrontation. Do you know anything about that? Was it made use of here?
We have no idea about it. We haven't gotten any information from the administration that number one, that it's actually that any kind of a framework even exists for what this is, or that it actually has been implemented in any way. Now, the military does have a history of something like this, and you'll recall something called the deconfliction line with Russia that existed for years over Syria. That worked. You had a U.S. colonel, generally with a Russian colonel, on the other end of a phone. It was literally a red phone, and they would pick it up if, in fact, one of them was going to be flying in an airspace that was breaching or near where the other military was operating. And it worked for years, where they were able to deconflict the airspace there. It's not clear if that's going to sort of be the maritime version of that, but we are asking those questions.
And let me ask you about the war within this war. We had Secretary Rubio today announcing a framework of an agreement between Israel and Lebanon. But if Hezbollah isn't part of that framework, what's it worth?
Yeah, and this has been the issue with these talks the entire time now. Every round of these talks is without Hezbollah involved in it. If there is some sort of an agreement for a ceasefire, whatever it is, it's generally not been implemented, at least not fully implemented on the ground in Lebanon. Now, this could be, if in fact Israel has agreed to something that includes them pulling their forces back closer to the border, Is it possible that Hezbollah will look at that and will make some sort of a advancement towards some sort of a peace deal? It's possible, but so far these talks have not really yielded a whole lot on the ground. The one thing that is potentially possible is that this could be a step in the right direction if, in fact, we see some sort of a change to not only the Israeli forces where they are inside Lebanon, but to how they are operating there. I mean, Garrett, it's not getting a lot of attention, but, more than 4,000 people have died in Lebanon since March. It's a huge number,
Yeah.
about 40 Israeli soldiers as well, service members as well. So the fighting there has continued, despite the fact that we've all been very focused on Iran.
Right. I mean, it's a major theater within this war. Courtney, Kube, thank you for that reporting. I want to turn now to Allie Canal here with me. And so, Allie, what are we seeing from oil markets? Are they concerned? Are we seeing any kind of like wobble in the pricing based on what we've seen in the Strait?
Well, it seems like markets are betting that the worst case scenario has been avoided at this point. We saw U.S. crude oil fall below $70 for the first time since the war began. And remember, pre-war, crude was trading near $67 a barrel. So this is a pretty significant move here. And it comes as more ships are moving through the Strait of Hormuz. Those fears that we could be facing a major supply crunch, that's starting to ease. But analysts say that there are still risks ahead. There could be more attacks on some of these ships. There could be mines in the Strait. Obviously, as you know, the messaging has been really back and forth here. So investors are still watching this area and the developments in the Strait very closely.
And we've heard the president complaining about the lag between oil prices really plummeting and gas prices coming down much more slowly. What is that attributable to? And do you think we'll see gas prices continue to fall?
Yeah, I mean, gas prices have already fallen pretty significantly at this point. The national average is right now at around $3.90 a gallon, down more than 60 cents from its most recent peak. But gas prices do not fall as quickly as oil prices. And that's because refineries, distributors, those retail locations, so the actual gas stations, they're dealing with oil that was purchased at those higher levels. So this is likely going to take some weeks to go until consumers see a significant pullback. And that's, of course, assuming that oil prices stay at along these levels. And also, it's important to remember that we're in the summer months. Demand is usually higher this time of year. So that tends to cause gas prices to drift up just a little bit.
And while I have you, the president has also threatened a 100% tariff on countries that implement a digital services tax on the U.S. Can you just explain to folks what this even is and how it would work?
Yeah, remember tariffs? We haven't talked about tariffs in a little bit.
Still last year.
Yeah, right. This is really about U.S. and EU trade relations. So several European countries, they've considered or adopted these digital services taxes. So it's basically a tax on the revenue that large tech companies earn on the users in those specific countries. So this really affects those big companies like Google, Meta, Apple, Amazon. Now, for now, this is just a threat. But of course, if that goes through, then a lot of those imports from those countries, so those goods that we get from Europe, they could become more expensive for U.S. businesses and therefore consumers. But we'll see. I mean, this could just be a negotiating tool. But again, it's a good reminder that tariffs are still an impact here. We talk a lot about oil prices, even the AI build out, how that's been impacting inflation. But tariffs, they're still working in the background here.
All right, Allie, also still working here in the background on Friday afternoon. Thank you for being with us.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.